Control is everywhere. Your boss wants to control your time. Your friends want to control your plans. Your family wants to control your choices. Society wants to control how you think. Most people go along with it because fighting back feels like too much trouble. They'd rather keep the peace than risk losing the relationship. But there's a specific type of person who handles control attempts in a way that throws everyone off. Not with anger. Not with big dramatic fights. Not even with obvious pushback. What they do is way more subtle. And by the time you realize what's happening, everything's already changed. This isn't about being difficult or trying to prove something. It's about how their brain works when someone tries to box them in. So here are 5 things that happen when people try to control a Sigma male. And number 3 is the one that changes everything. The first sign: they go quiet. When someone starts putting pressure on them, most people react right away. They argue back, defend themselves, or just give in to avoid the drama. Sigma males feel that same urge to push back at first, but something else happens before they do. They go quiet. Not the cold shoulder, angry kind of quiet. The watching and waiting kind. They're trying to figure out if this is just a bad day or if this is how things are going to be now. This quiet moment isn't them backing down or agreeing with what's happening. It's them gathering information in real time. They're paying attention to how the person is trying to control them, what they really want underneath all the words, and whether this is something that can get fixed or if it's showing them something bigger about who this person really is. While the other person thinks they're getting their way because nobody's fighting back, the Sigma male is asking himself if this relationship is actually worth what it's starting to cost him. John Gottman spent years studying how relationships work and fall apart. He talked about something called stonewalling, which most people think is always bad. And yeah, shutting down during an argument usually is bad. But when someone's trying to control you, going quiet does something different. It's refusing to play the game on their terms, which eventually makes them show you what they're really after. Here's why this works better than most people expect. People who want control need you to react, so they know their power move is working. When you don't give them that reaction, they usually do more. They push harder, get more demanding, raise their voice, make bigger threats. And every time they do more, they're showing you more about what's really going on. The Sigma male doesn't have to wonder anymore. He can see exactly what kind of person he's dealing with. And that information becomes really important later when he figures out what to do about all this. The person doing the controlling almost always gets this wrong. They see the quiet and think they won. They think their control worked. But what's really happening inside the Sigma's head is a door closing. Not because he's angry or hurt, because he just learned something clear about this person's character. And he's remembering it for later, which usually comes sooner than anyone thinks. But the quiet is just the beginning. What happens next is where things really start to shift. Number 2, they stop engaging emotionally. Control tactics work by hitting your emotions. Guilt trips work because you feel bad about letting someone down. Threats work because you're scared of what might happen. Praise and compliments work because you want someone to think well of you. Sigma males feel these emotional pulls too, just like everyone else does. But somewhere along the way, their mind developed a kind of filter that kicks in when they notice these tactics being used on them. This doesn't mean they stop caring about the person or the relationship overnight. It means they stop letting someone else's emotional games control what they do. When someone tells them they're being selfish for setting a boundary, most people feel guilty enough to give in and say, okay, fine. Sigma males hear those same words, recognize what's really happening underneath them, and something in their head just disconnects from taking the bait. Not because they're heartless machines, because they've learned the hard way that giving into this stuff doesn't fix anything. It just teaches the other person that the trick works. There's this concept in psychology called emotional regulation. Most of the research is about managing your own feelings better, but there's another part of it that doesn't get talked about as much. It's about not taking on other people's emotional stuff that they're trying to dump on you. When someone tries to make their panic your problem to solve, their anger your fault somehow, their disappointment your job to fix. Sigma males have gotten good at seeing that for what it is, even when it comes wrapped up in care or love. This really confuses people who are used to emotional tactics working on everyone around them. When it suddenly stops working, they don't know what their next move should be. They might start trying different emotions to see which one finally gets through. The anger switches to sadness. The sadness switches to guilt. The guilt switches to threats. But none of it gets the reaction they're fishing for because the Sigma male already unplugged from that whole emotional game in this relationship. What's interesting is how this gets interpreted from the outside. This detachment usually gets called not caring about the relationship or ignoring someone's feelings. But it's actually the exact opposite. Sigma males care enough about themselves and their peace of mind that they won't let someone turn emotions into weapons. That self-respect looks like cold indifference when you're expecting an emotional reaction, but it's really just boundaries doing their job in real time. And boundaries don't need a bunch of explanations to exist. They just do. What happens next is what makes it permanent. Number 3. They create distance without explanation. When control persists, Sigma males don't schedule a confrontation or send a long text explaining why the relationship isn't working. They just start fading. Responses get shorter. Availability decreases. Plans get canceled. The distance increases gradually until one day the other person realizes they haven't heard from him in weeks. This happens because Sigma men don't believe in fighting for relationships that require them to shrink. If someone can't respect his autonomy, explaining it won't help. Words don't fix character. So instead of wasting energy on conversations that won't change anything, he redirects that energy toward people and situations that don't require him to compromise his freedom. Harriet Lerner wrote about the difference between connection and enmeshment in relationships. Connection respects individuality. Enmeshment demands conformity. When someone tries to control a Sigma, they're asking for enmeshment. He responds by protecting his individuality, and that protection requires distance. The person being distanced usually doesn't understand what happened. From their perspective, everything was fine, and then suddenly it wasn't. They didn't see the small control attempts as problems. They thought they were just expressing preferences or offering guidance. But each small attempt was a test, and they failed every one. The Sigma male was giving chances, and they kept choosing control over respect. Here's the part that frustrates people most. Sigma males don't feel obligated to explain their departure. They don't owe anyone a breakdown of why the relationship isn't working. That's another form of control. Demanding an exit interview like you're entitled to closure. He's already closed that chapter internally. Whether the other person understands it or not isn't his concern. And here's where it starts getting noticeable. Number 4. They become unreachable. Physical distance is one thing. Emotional unavailability is another. Even if circumstances force a Sigma male to stay in proximity to someone trying to control him, maybe it's a work situation or a family obligation, he becomes unreachable in every way that matters. He's present but absent, responds but doesn't engage, participates but doesn't invest. It's like talking to a polite stranger who has no personal connection to you. The warmth is gone. The openness is gone. What's left is the bare minimum required by the situation and nothing more. This is protective, not punitive. Sigma males aren't withholding connection to punish anyone. They're withholding it to protect themselves. Once trust is broken by control attempts, rebuilding it requires proof of change. And most people don't change. They just get better at hiding their control tactics. So the Sigma male stays unreachable until he sees consistent evidence that the dynamic has actually shifted. People need to feel secure before they can be vulnerable. Control destroys that safety. When someone tries to dictate your choices, monitor your behavior, or manipulate your decisions, they're signaling that your autonomy isn't safe with them. Sigma males take that signal seriously and adjust accordingly. The frustrating part for the person experiencing this is that everything looks normal on the surface. He's not angry, not rude, not dramatic, but something fundamental has changed, and they can't figure out how to get it back. That's because they're looking for a switch to flip when what actually needs to happen is a complete rewiring of how they approach the relationship. And most people aren't willing to do that work. But what comes next is what people realize too late. Number 5. They don't come back. This is the hardest part for people to accept. When a Sigma creates distance because of control attempts, that distance tends to be permanent. There's no cooling off period after which things return to normal. There's no grand reconciliation where everyone hugs it out. The relationship just ends, quietly and definitively. This happens because Sigma males have long memories for patterns. They might forget what you said, but they never forget how you made them feel when you tried to control their choices. That feeling becomes data. And data doesn't lie. Once they've identified you as someone who prioritizes control over respect, that categorization sticks. Maya Angelou famously said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Sigma males take this seriously. They don't need multiple demonstrations of the same character flaw. One clear pattern is enough. They believe what you showed them, and they adjust their life accordingly. People who realize they've lost access often try to fix things later. They apologize, promise change, explain that they didn't mean it that way. Sometimes those apologies are genuine, but by the time they arrive, the Sigma male has already moved on. Not because he's holding a grudge, because he's already reallocated that space in his life, and there's no vacancy anymore. Here's what makes this final. Sigma males don't keep doors open just in case. When they close a door, they lock it and lose the key. That's not coldness, it's clarity. They know that most people apologize to regain access, not because they fundamentally changed. And he's not interested in being someone's second chance when they couldn't get it right the first time with basic respect.